Hi there, welcome to episode 1 of the new series that I'm going to be running on YouTube. We're going to see if it actually takes off or not. If not, fine, it's a hobby and it's a way for me to blow off steam. And if so, awesome. My name's Spencer. For purposes of this video, I am your Spenser of knowledge. And in our first episode here, we're going to talk about something that's a little bit hot topic. We're going to talk a little bit about vaccines and autism. For those of you who don't know, I have Asperger's autism. I've also been diagnosed with high-functioning autism. I'm right on the cusp. Either way. It means I have trouble with social interactions, and if I were actually trying to talk to you in person, this actually wouldn't work. But hey, what the heck. I'm actually talking to a camera, which makes it doable, and I get the added benefit of the fact that you guys get to see this, so I can actually talk freely without sounding like a stumbling, bumbling idiot. Alright, the whole autism vaccine thing. First, my credentials. 6 times diagnosed. First time at Duke University School of Medicine, where I was taking part in the Talent Identification Project. Second time at the Carolina Medical Center, that's UNC Chapel Hill, as part of the autism genome research studies that they were doing there. Third time was at... gotta think about that. Third time was at a disability hearing in Raleigh, North Carolina. Fourth time was at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, where again I was taking part in a disability research study. What should I bring us up to? Fifth time was my disability renewal hearing, and sixth time was very recently, was at the university, It's actually called the Medical University of South Carolina, and it was the Charleston branch, where I talked to 2 neurologists, one named Woodward and one named Woodworth. Both quite interesting gentlemen. So 6 times diagnosed. The other thing I should mention is I'm 38 years old, which means that I am minimally vaccinated. I've had 3. I've had the polio vaccine, I've had the DTaP vaccine, and oddly enough I've had the rabies vaccine because I was bitten by a feral cat about 10 years ago. So I'm probably one of the few people you'll ever meet who has rabies antibodies in their blood. 3 times. I have not had the 36 odd recommended shots that they suggest for the average newborn in the United States these days. Also, I don't get flu shots, not because I have a problem with the concept of vaccination, which I will explain here in a minute, but because I feel that it's utterly impossible to create a vaccine for a shifting antigen virus. It doesn't matter what vaccine you get for the flu, you're probably going to get the flu because flu mutates very, very quickly, and that makes it very difficult to create a vaccine that's specific to whichever flu happens to be in your area, which could be any one of 3 to 5. So I don't do the flu shots, and that may somewhat alter the circumstances. The other thing I need to mention is that I actually took part in the Human Genome Project in Asheville, at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. I was actually genotyped. They did a full gene spectrum, which is one of those things you can now order online for $150 from like 123.com, which was enlightening in various ways. I already knew that my parents had schizophrenia. Yes, both of them. One of them bipolar schizophrenic, the doctors aren't sure which. The other was for sure schizophrenic. I also already knew that in my family, a very large family, because of intermarriage and because my grandmother had 5 children, there are no less than 9 cases of autism spectrum disorder, ranging from PDD and OS, all the way to Kanner's autism. The Kanner's child is nonverbal and non-functional. So we do cover the full range. And that's one of the reasons that I keep getting involved in research projects. They keep trying to figure out why my family, which is located in an obscure little town east of Asheville, North Carolina, has such a high incidence of autism. We're not sure what's going on there. But my genotyping was autism positive. I do have several of the genes and chromosomes that are, well, genes on the chromosomes that are related to autism positivity. I could give you a list of them, but you're not really interested in the genetics most likely. If you are, say so in the comments, and I'll give you a list of the genes that I did test positive for. Also, I did test positive for heavy metal poisoning, but it was not mercury, it was not thimerosal, it was lead, And the lead poisoning was traced back to my grandmother's home. My grandmother actually had the copper pipes with lead solder, so I probably drank a lot of lead-tainted water when I was a child. My mother more so. Also, there was lead paint in several of the rooms of her home, and I was raised there. When my mother was institutionalized, my grandparents took me in, which was amazingly awesome of them to take in an autistic child. And their home did have lead paint on the walls, so I was exposed to lead paint flakes. So those are my basic exposures and so forth. Now, the question comes down to whether or not vaccines cause autism, and I would have to say that they in and of themselves solely do not. If you say to me that my vaccinations for was I vaccinated for polio too? It might be 4. If you say that my vaccinations for various diseases led to me being autistic, I would definitely have to argue with you. I have perfectly normal siblings and perfectly normal cousins who all received the same vaccinations from the same doctor, from the same batch, because we were actually taken in groups. My grandmother could not afford multiple trips, so we were actually taken in groups to the various doctor's appointments, and it was all done at once, which was another thing that was unique and made me eligible for these studies. The fact that we were multiply vaccinated from the same actual vaccine batches. So in my opinion, no, vaccines do not cause autism. Do they cause Guillain-Barrés? Occasionally, yeah. Do people have bad reactions to vaccines? Oh yes, all the time. Are vaccines unreliable? Even that, I'm going to have to say yes. Vaccines do not always work. They are not 100% effective. I think the most effective one is 92.6% or somewhere in there. I'd have to look up the statistic again, but there's no such thing as 100% effective vaccine. So do they cause problems? Sure. I mean, I had a massive allergic reaction to the DTaP shot. I was hospitalized for that one. But it was an allergy. It was an actual case of anaphylaxis. It was not some odd heavy metal poisoning. It was not a neurological problem. Did I have a friend who had Guillain-Barrés due to a vaccine? Yeah, he got a flu shot. For whatever reason, his nervous system did overreact to that. He was in fact paralyzed. He did in fact nearly die. Why is kind of iffy. Was it mercury poisoning? No. It was not the thimerosal. It was some inflammation caused by some irritant in the vaccine that certain numbers of people are prone to. So do I consider vaccines safe? I can't say that I do. Not 100%. Not at the levels that we currently vaccinate at. We are the most vaccinated country in the world. We're the most vaccinated of the first world countries. Read a statistic the other day that it was 5 or 6 times more on average than, say, the Netherlands. Again, you might want to check my numbers because I'm not good with numbers. But it was definitely somewhere in there. What do I think causes autism? Well, frankly, I feel that autism is a genetic and an epigenetic disorder. Definitely a case where you are born with the genes. Do the genes themselves cause autism? Current research says no, actually. Not by themselves. They tend to be latent or dormant, and then they're triggered later in life, and no one's 100% sure what the triggers are. In some cases, it may be vaccines. In my case, it probably was not. Again, I was minimally vaccinated. So it seems improbable that in my particular case, as an adult male with autism, that it was a vaccine. Sorry. I can't say that that's a 100% thing. I can say that it does seem to be a rarer thing. I've been involved in many of these studies, and the vast majority of these studies say that the triggers were probably other things. Dietary, the mother's genetics, the age of the father, GABA protein uptake, a lack of glutathione, vitamin D deficiencies, vitamin B deficiencies, exposure in early life to things like video games. Yes, video games do in fact alter the neurophysiological aspects of the player. Your brain does change with heavy video game or screen exposure use, and again, I will gladly provide sources for anyone who asks for them in the comments. I have a list of at least 50. Cell phone use does alter individual neuropsychology and neuroplasticity as well. So there are all those things. Extreme allergies, the fact that the vast majority of children with autism are also born with gastrointestinal defects that can lead to something called leaky gut syndrome, which in turn can lead to brain inflammation and improper chemical uptake. There are literally dozens of reasons why your child could be autistic, and chances are the more of those reasons that are present in the child's life, the more autistic that child will be. I kind of lucked out. I only have 3 or 4 of the autism causing triggers that have been recorded, and I think I've mentioned all of them. I do have severe food allergies now, although those developed later in life, probably because my diet was crap. I was a serious junk food junkie. So I can't say that in my opinion there's a definitive link between autism and vaccination. I simply can't. There are too many other factors. And again, I will gladly provide my sources, which are not, by the way, all AMA or CDC or Big Pharma or whatever. I also have nutritionists, herbalists, holistic doctors, and so on, who have provided research to the various programs I've been involved in or have read myself. There's quite a bit of linkage to the modern diet, to pesticides, to the hormones that we add to our food, and so on. I actually do eat organic at this point, which is one of the reasons that I am considered to be high functioning. Some of my autism symptoms were, in fact, clinically ameliorated. I can again provide evidence of that when I changed over to an organic and healthy diet. A lot of the symptoms that I was experiencing do seem to have been neurologically food allergy related. And when I cleaned that up, many of them went away. So many factors. And of course, I am an individual, and what holds true for me will not hold true for everyone. It is one of the things that is most commonly forgotten in medicine, but every human being is different. We actually are, if nothing else, a coroner or a pathologist can tell you that, because when you die, chances are very good that you will be outside the usual norms on something. Everybody has deviations, and if it's something as basic as physiology that's different, well then mental and neurological and biochemical things are definitely going to be different. Environment is different, personality is different. I'm not saying that my particular case applies to every single person on this planet, including your autistic child or your autistic cousin, or the guy you think might be autistic who rides with you on the bus. I'm not. That's my whole point. My whole point is that there are too many and too chaotic a number of outside influences for you to definitively point your finger at anything, and that includes vaccines. That said, am I anti-vax? No, I'm not. Am I pro-vax? No, I'm not, in case I didn't make that clear. Like I said, vaccines themselves do have inherent dangers. You could be allergic to them, you could react to something in them. Your neurophysiology may be in some way quirked so that the vaccine is a perfect trigger for something really horrible to happen to you. But I don't think you can generalize and say that this holds true of the entire population. And while this has not been the most factual of the Spenser videos that I have already made and hope to put up, including some about the Boston Molasses Massacre or the bat napalming of military bases, or even the actual physiological reactions of what happens to you when you eat sugar, this is one of the ones that I felt that needed to go up and be posted in the near future, because I kept seeing this one other thing that I want to talk about very briefly here. I keep seeing this thing posted on Facebook and Twitter and the Tumblr and Reddit and so on about the fact that the Amish do not get autism. Okay, first of all, one study, just one, is responsible for all of those rumors. A gentleman by the name of Dan Olmsted wandered through Lancaster County for 7 days during a vacation once. It might have been more than 7 days, but he was on vacation. This was not a serious study. and he spoke to various people in the Lancaster area about Amish autism and vaccines, and he came to the conclusion that Amish people do not vaccinate and that Amish children do not have autism. Both of those are incorrect. Studies by dozens, repeat dozens, of more reputable individuals than Mr. Dan Olmsted, who was one guy who did one informal study, dozens of less informal studies suggest that at least 86% of Amish people vaccinate. Those who do not actually report that they do not vaccinate because they are afraid of what they are hearing from the anti-vaxxer universe outside of their communities. Let's just get that right in the clear. And second, the Amish do have autism. It's not as high a rate, and they are also far more reluctant to share it with the medical community. They do not like to use AMA doctors. They prefer to keep the child home and treat him according to their religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs. But the kid nonetheless has autism. As a matter of fact, the autism rate among the Amish is about equivalent to the Amish rate in the non-Amish population. I'm not sure if I said that right. I'll repeat it. The Amish population of autistic children is about equivalent to the non-autistic Amish population. So, in Lancaster, you have the same incidence of autism as you have in New York City. It's just not reported as often. It's really as simple as that. Also, they're less likely to expose the child not only to the outside world, but to the medical world for various reasons. That make sense within their community, but may not make sense within the context of a more urban environment. So again, it's perhaps underreported, but it does occur. And the studies that have been serious, where they've actually gone into the areas and lived in the communities and talked to the doctors that work within the communities and so forth, say that the incidence rate is about equivalent to anybody else's. And they do vaccinate. So I just wanted to get that one right out there. I'm really tired of seeing that one. It's definitely bull. And on top of the research studies, if you want me to, I can put you in touch with a neuropsychologist, a professor of medicine, who himself is Amish and from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and has been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, or perhaps just Asperger's type personality disorder, but who nonetheless has a medical and clinical diagnosis for autism himself. Just ask me in the comments, and I'll put you in touch with that individual, with his permission, of course. So there's some anecdotal evidence to go on top of the actual research evidence. If you want a bibliography of my sources, again, I will provide it happily. Just ask me in the comments, and I will send it to you by email, probably the same day, because I'm self-employed. So, all of that said, I really, 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 really wish that people would quit using people like me, as in autists, as an example of why they don't vaccinate. Stop it. It's really annoying. Frankly, I'm glad I was vaccinated. I'd rather have autism than polio. And also, there's not enough evidence to prove that that polio vaccine caused my autism. I would really appreciate it if you stopped using me and my friends and my family and my godson as reasons not to vaccinate your child. Thank you. And all that said, I will close this rather unusually heavy episode of Spenser of Knowledge, and I will wish you all a fine and peachy day. Godspeed.